I got the time right here. I got the time right now. Uh-huh. That's right. Time is all I got right here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, here in the internet world, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you tune in to get the real scoop. My name is Don Strong. I am here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I am interviewing Brother David from Brooklyn.
Time, she's my friend.
Hello, everyone. This is Brother David from Brooklyn, and I'm here to speak to you today. And what I'm going to talk about is something that's very important. The fact that people have no parties. People have no parties. The political parties that we have, they are not the property of the people, the masses of people that live in the country. The only way people can rule who are in charge, that's the ruling class. The ruling class, the people who rarely rule, is to do a number of things. And those things are like, number one is divide and conquer. You have to divide people up into groups, and that's the way you can rule them. You have to distract people from the real issues. So you divide and conquer the people, or divide and rule, and you distract them and keep them distracted from what you really want to do. And another big part of it, as part of that, is play the people against each other. You got to play one group against another group, and that's what works for those who rule, especially being the ones who rule that is a very small group. And when you're controlling a lot of people, you have to control information. So if you're going to rule, you have to control any schools and not educate people, which is to empower them, but train them for what you want to do, which is usually to enrich yourself. In addition to schools, you can control the media, all the media, the corporate media and television, radio, newspaper, all kinds of print. You control that and you can rule. So a very small group of people can rule a lot. Now, we're under the illusion that we have this thing called democracy. Now, the United States, when it broke away from the settled colonial state that was set up by the monarchy in England and Europe, the 13 colonies, it was set up as a settler colonial state. Hey, why were they able to do that? They were able to do that because they came to a land where there were nations already, and their plan was to take them over by devious means, by guile, by physical warfare, and ethnic cleansing, and take over. That's what they were really designed to do. And all this stuff about they came over here to be friends with the so-called Indians is not true at all. This was a matter of conquest and taking over. Now, democracy was not something that they had in mind when they had their revolution against the monarchy in England. Democracy would mean that you were interested in the people who were living in a particular location, which was the 13 colonies, and treating people in a democratic way, and that was never the choice that they made. The Constitution was essentially determined and made up by slaveholding people or people approved of slavery, and you can't have democracy and slavery at the same time. Women were not allowed to vote. The slaves weren't, and the people they call Indians weren't, and people didn't have property, men that is, were not allowed to vote. So you have to do all these things to maintain control, even though you're calling yourself having a democracy. Now, what I said today was the people have no party. Now, what I mean by that is that we have no viable parties in this country other than Republican and Democrat, which these both parties have one thing in mind: to rule, and they are owned lock, stock, and barrel by the ruling class. The people don't run these parties. The people at the very top run the parties. So where's the People's Party? Their interests. These parties are controlled by the corporations, the rich people at top, and not the masses of the people, whether it's Republican or Democrat. And it's a brilliant thing that the people who rule are able to get the ordinary people, many of them supporting these parties that really don't represent their interests. And we see that that is in high gear right now, where those people who run the party, the rich and the powerful, are getting richer and richer, and the masses of the people are getting poorer and poorer. And yet, even in the most destitute, poorest states, you know, the Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Kentucky, you got people so confused that they keep voting for parties that don't represent their interests, and the people at the top are laughing at them every day as they go to the bank. So that's what I mean, that people have no party that represents their interests. So this should be a concern for everyone. How do they do that? They control the government at all levels, the legislative level, the legal level with the judges, and administration level. For example, every state, they have a legislative branch, and the ruling class is well represented in every state. They decide how parties get to be on the ballot. And so right now, I can't think of any other viable parties that are on ballots in all the states other than the Republicans and Democrats. There may be some isolated cases, but that's it as far as I see it. And the Republicans and Democrats don't represent the masses of people that live here. So people have to get it and understand how the country runs. There are many ways that they do that in the states. They have all kinds of ways to control the people by restricting how parties get on the ballot. It makes it very difficult. And they restrict those who can vote. Some are allowed to vote, but they do everything they can to keep the number of people voting smaller and smaller. All kinds of devices that are used, like gerrymandering and restrictive voting procedures, and anything that can be done to manage to restrict the vote of the people, so it's done. And it's very effective by those who lose. So if you want to rule people, you have to be very slick and accomplished at doing what has to be done to play the people. This is called playing the people. And the ruling class is absolutely skilled at doing that. So most of us are being played, and we'll have even people voting against their own interests because they are played very well by those who rule. So think about it, and think about how you're being played, and you have no party that really represents your interests, whether it's Republican or Democrat. They represent the interests of those at the top. And don't forget about it, the ruling elite are the ones who control just about everything. They fill up all the top positions at the legislative branch, and they are very tied up with the corporations that run the country. So this is essentially a corporate state that runs in the interests of those at the very top of the food chain. At the top of the pyramid, those are the people that run the country, and they're not worried about the masses, just so they are able to keep them under control by a variety of techniques that are used. So think about what is going on. Think about how you're being played, and think about making some moves to do something different, like starting some new parties that represent the interests of the. Those who want to know more about me and haven't read my book, Playing the Game, you might find it very interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing you another time. And thank you for listening to this post. Thank you so much.
This program is produced as a community service as a source of alternative information. Theme song by Don Strong and Danny Fromm, all rights reserved. Please note, the information presented and opinions expressed by Brother David do not necessarily reflect the opinions or imply endorsement by the producers of this program. Thank you for tuning in.